Welcome to the Critical Few Actions to Improve Your Business podcast. I'm John Downs and I'm here to help you cut through the overwhelm and prioritise what matters most to improve your business. Let's get started and discover the critical few actions that have the biggest impact. Today, I've invited Dianne Semmens, CEO of Acacia Consulting Services, to come back and talk about an issue that many businesses have with their ERPs. Welcome, Di.
Thanks, John. Always good to chat with you.
So, Di, in my experience, I think about adopting an ERP as being a bit like when you first got into Microsoft Excel. Yep, the first thing was to learn a basic spreadsheet design, lay out the data, run the basic calculations, and then maybe you ventured into using formulas and doing some text or data manipulations and maybe even a bit of a racy VLOOKUP table. And that's where most people plateaued for years. I know I certainly did. And it's doing what they want them to do, and they're not really venturing much outside their comfort zone. And that's where I think the first level of maturity is for ERP. Learn the basics, run the business. But then in Excel, there's so much untapped capability. Once you've seen how to do a pivot table and charts to slice and dice your data, you'll never look back. And then there's conditional formatting and dynamic visuals, data management and analysis, dynamic dashboards and charts, and Power Queries. Who knew that Excel was so powerful? But it's the same with ERP, Dianne, isn't it? There's so much more you can get from what you've actually paid for, and so many people are leaving money on the table. So Dianne, take me through, what are the top 5 next level things that businesses can do with their ERP that they're probably not really taking full advantage of?
I agree with what all of you said, John. And I'd have to say that typically 12 months after a business has started using an ERP solution, pretty much they're overwhelmed in those first 12 months and they're just trying to get their company identity into the ERP. And so I would always suggest a review 12 months later and look at taking advantage of things like mobile applications, automation, expanding things like business alerts. Look at stock planning. Look at it in a detailed way, especially if you're in manufacturing. It's so important. And then probably the final thing I'd say is to look at AI. What AI have you got available to you?
Right. So that's quite a mouthful. So why don't you take us through that? So you started off with, I think the first one was mobile apps. Tell me a bit about that.
Most applications have some form of mobile app. Now, if it's a web-based app, you could probably use a web-based app on your phone via a web browser. Now, that's not realistic. Let's be honest about that. It's too hard to use a web browser and your fingers just won't work. So if your application has a mobile app, you should investigate it. And because typically in those sorts of mobile apps, you've got things like boring, but purchase orders, time tracking, expense claims is a big thing to be able to have someone take an image of their expense claim and then, or expense receipt, and then put it together as an expense claim.
So they can actually do that before they even leave the checkout.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But usually there's this power of angst in the last 2 or 3 days of the month when people are basically setting aside an hour or two to actually do their expense claims.
Or rifling through the centre console of their car and finding all their Bunnings receipts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's more than just expense claims. What else can they use with mobile apps for?
Look, it depends upon the application, but typically it would be time recording. So if you're on site, you might be recording the time, and then you might be asking the client to sign on glass to say, yes, I approve that those services have been provided. And then you may even extend that mobile app to have a pay on glass where the client then enters in their credit card details and off you go, and it's all paid and dealt with rather than having to come back to the finance team for them to chase the debt.
Right. Oh, good.
There's a lot that you can do now in those mobile apps, and a lot of businesses maybe don't know they're there or don't know the full functionality of it. So it's important to look and check those. I mean, the mobile app could even be about doing leave requests, annual leave requests, or looking up their leave balances or looking up their last few pay slips. Those are the sorts of things that are possible.
Well, I guess as we know, most information these days is consumed on mobile devices, not on their desktops. And so it's almost an expectation now that for employers that they can self-serve their leave applications, check their pay details and so on, all on their own phone. They don't want to do
But
that.
mobile phone, you've got to have an app that is optimized for mobile phones. So
Right.
while most of the apps can run on a phone via a browser, does it feel good if you're trying to use it? Probably not.
No.
You're better off using a specifically built mobile app. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And so then you talked about automations. Tell me a bit more about that. How are businesses using automations?
One of the most simple examples is people phone your business. You take down the details of an order, you enter it into the system, or ideally you enter it in the system as you're actually speaking to them. And then as you commit that order to your database, it will send them an email. Hi, Billy Joe. Just confirming you placed an order today for these items. It does two things. One, it shows customer loyalty. It shows the customer that you care about them, especially if you craft that email well. And it also gives them a chance to say, hold on, I didn't want it in blue, I wanted it in pink.
Mm,
So I then have that chance to then contact you back and say, guess what? I want the pink, not the blue, or vice versa. So
mm,
it's that customer service that you can then take to that next degree around that automation. So that's a simple one around order taking. The next thing might even be that if you've got people doing purchase orders, that you then have an approval map process that takes you through a stage process of, yes, this is an expensive purchase order, so therefore it needs to go to the business owner for approval before the purchase order can be released. Those are
mm.
those sorts of automation steps.
Yeah. And I think, because everyone's so used to online shopping or online subscribing or online signing up, they've come to expect that they'll get these sorts of communications instantly. And so if your business is not providing that in some of those customer facing experiences, then you're going to look like you're a little bit old hat.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right that the expectation is there by customers, especially if you're dealing with customers or B to C, you expect it. But even B2B, it's really important to do it. If you're selling a low margin product and if you're absorbing the cost of freight, then you want to make sure that what you deliver to the customer is exactly what they ordered, because otherwise you're going to be, sending two lots of stock items and sending two lots of freight. And that's just too expensive, really.
Yeah, chewing up margin.
Absolutely. Chewing up
Mm.
margin.
And then I think you mentioned something about business alerts.
Yeah. Most software nowadays has the ability to look at your data or look at what's in your database and go, whoops, hold on. So, the simplest example would be, okay, I've got all this stock that's about to expire on a certain date. Warn me when that expiry date is 1 month out. Don't tell me 2 days after it's expired. Give me a warning well before so that I can actually go out to customers that I know buy the product, or people that buy similar products and I want to do a bit of cross-selling. Offer it to them as a discount or something like that, but get the stock moving. Don't have it sitting in your warehouse. And,
Mm.
further to that, another example of that would be if you've got this sales rep that's doing fantastic sales. But when you actually dig down, each of those sales is at a lot lower margin than what his compatriots are. And that's why he's getting the sales, because he's chopping the guts out of your margin but he's still hitting his sales targets.
Mm.
Just understand that for each individual order, you can have that alert coming to you and saying, hold on, I'm nearly out of stock. So every morning, check your stock levels. Instead of you having to go down and walk through the warehouse, here's an alert about all of those stock items
Yeah.
that are about to expire.
Gotcha. And then MRP and stock planning. How many of your manufacturing clients would be using, the full scope of the MRP functionality to help them with their production planning?
Oh, it's huge. It's really important. And look, this is what does take the time when you're setting up an MRP solution, is that you actually need to break down your bill of materials into different stages, especially if you're building something big like
Mm.
a sandblasting unit or like a boat or like a bus, or anything that's going to take more than 2 minutes to assemble. You really do need to have that as a broken down process so you can actually track the build as it goes through the process, and conversely, don't order stock for those items unless you know that that you're only going to need it next week. So let's make sure, and we know that we can get good supply, so let's make sure that we order it in a timely fashion rather than having money tied up in stock.
Mm.
That's that old adage. Do I have my warehouse full of spare parts? Because I know at some point in time I'm going to need to have that $50 part to finish off that project. Let's just plan to make sure that I've got the right stock that I need.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, well, that that is such a common complaint with clients, particularly in the manufacturing space,
Oh,
when they've got a $200,000, $300,000 product that's about to go out the door, but for the fact that they've got a $20 partner there that they've been waiting on for 3 weeks, and they're sitting on an invoice that they can't send out for $100,000. It really does
and that's why stock
spoil the
planning.
experience.
Oh, definitely. Like, great, I've got this order. Great, we've spent weeks and weeks and weeks building this thing, and now I can't release it because I don't have that little bit left to go
Yeah.
to add in.
And so all the rage this year, of course, is artificial intelligence. And, one of the questions that many people are asking is how is AI now being integrated into these ERPs? And is the ERP AI first or even AI competent? And will AI eliminate the need for an ERP? Because basically you can just use AI to
Oh,
patch together a whole bunch of legacy systems.
that's a really, really interesting question to ask. So two things with that. ERP is a collection of data.
Mm.
To have the data in one spot and to know where that data is, and to have a system that can actually reliably call up that data. That's what an ERP is, rather than having 7 different systems where you've got to make sure they're all in sync before you then try and pull that data together. That's one thing I'd say. If we talk about AI, one of the simplest forms of AI is the scanning and recognition of documents for an accounts payable solution.
Oh, yeah.
So to take that's the simplest form. Okay, here we are. We've got this document. Here we know that when we get this document from Telstra, when we get this invoice from Telstra, that we're going to find the amount here, we're going to find the date here, and the due date here. Suck that in and have that in. Now that's the simplest form. To take it to the next level is to then say, okay, while you're looking at those fields, can you also look at the ABN? Can you look at the address? Can you look at the banking details? Have the banking details changed? Is this a
Mhm.
risk? Is this outside my normal spend? So we work with a company called Trailed, who have this great product that actually not only does that optical recognition of the data and pushes it into the database, it actually goes to that next level of approvals. And it also goes to that risk management. Is this in our normal spend? Yes, no. Oh, that's okay. I know it's outside my normal spend, and I'm happy to accept that as a risk factor. So
Yeah.
that's that sort of thing. And then what I really see happening in the long run, and we're starting to see this coming in now, where you can actually go to a large language model within your accounting solution and say, show me the top 5 customers in the Geelong area.
So,
Show me the top 5 customers within these parameters.
so we're getting much better natural language query capability and analysis.
Rather than select customers where this condition exists, that old
Yeah,
SQL,
yeah, yeah.
SQL statements that we used to have to write,
Yep.
where
Boolean
customer
logic.
equals this.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. We can now ask it in normal language terms, which makes it obviously a whole lot easier to find stuff and see
Mhm.
stuff.
Are you looking to pinpoint the areas that will make the biggest impact on your business? Check out the Organisation Performance and Value Diagnostic. This powerful tool lets you evaluate your business on multiple facets and provides email reminders to keep you on track. Head over to criticalfewactions.com.au and get started now. So, Dianne, we've taken a quick romp through those 5 major areas, and I suspect there's plenty more. But where, how much money do you think businesses are leaving on the table if they just stayed at maturity level 1, doing business, getting stuff out the door, as opposed to also really delving into, so how much more is there in this package?
I look at it not in terms of dollars, I look at it in terms of efficiency.
Right.
So if I've got 3 staff that are going full tilt at just trying to keep my systems in place, what sort of things can I do in the ERP that will lessen their workload?
Mm.
So if they're doing this, this, and this, and a whole lot of those is transferring data to here, transferring data to there, then let's look at processes and systems that will reduce the volume of work that they have to do in transferring data. Let's look at the way that they're doing things and see whether we can't make it more efficient. Like, that simple thing of sending an email to a customer as soon
Yes.
as the order's placed.
Mm.
It looks as though I'm sending it from me personally because I'm the one that's logged into the system. So, hey, John, I noticed you ordered these products. I mean, it could be even that you pop another question in there. Hey, did you also want to order this?
Yeah. Yeah.
those sorts of things that just make it a little bit more personal. And from your friend, Dianne at Acacia,
Yeah.
rather than from this automated system that says, dear customer, how good are you? You've ordered these bits. Yours faithfully, Acacia Consulting Services.
Accounts payable.
Accounting. Exactly.
Yeah.
And pay up now.
Yeah. And I think that question around how can we make it even easier for our team, which is not about headcount reduction, it's about creating capacity. I think about Erin, who works for a client of mine in the western suburbs. And, she spends the last week before the end of the month and the first week after the end of the month, full-time hammer and tong, working in the system, trying to get month-end results out and trying to get month-end invoicing out and get payroll sorted out. And there's a hell of a lot of stuff that, frankly, I don't believe she needs to be doing. And the system is probably actually set up to do for her, if only she would be able to allow it to actually help her. And what would that do? Would we be able to lay her off for 2 weeks of the month? No.
Probably not.
Well, what we could
Probably
actually
not.
do is she could actually prepare the monthly board packs really effectively, as opposed to it being a hodgepodge of spreadsheets when we actually get to have our board meeting. And she'll be able to actually spend some time actually talking about some of the insights that the data is telling us, as opposed to basically just reading us the spreadsheets on the screen. And that
Correct.
makes a power of difference to the value add that she's providing, because she's actually looking more like a finance manager than actually a bookkeeper.
And it could even be that when other people aren't answering the phone and she answers the phone, she can actually say, hey, good to hear from you. How have you been? What have you done on the weekend? And build the rapport or that customer relationship. I mean,
As
you
opposed to
can't.
biting their heads off. What do you
Oh,
want?
totally. What do you want? I've got to move on to the next thing. That whole customer. I think we've almost lost that art of customer relationships and building customer relations and being able to speak to our clients rather than just having this, as I call it, email table tennis or phone call table tennis.
Yeah,
Actually speaking to clients, speaking to people in the flesh, you'll get way more out of it.
absolutely. If you really want to kick off your strategic planning and work in a supportive environment with other CEOs and leaders, the CEO Masterclass in Strategic Planning and Implementation is for you. This 10-month small group course helps you craft your strategic plan, present it to a group of peer investors, and develop a habit of monthly implementation. Our waitlist is open now at CriticalFewActions.com.au. So, Di, if you were to ruthlessly prioritise what we've talked about, if a founder or CEO is looking to take the next step with their ERP system that they've now learned to love or tolerate, what critical few actions should they start doing tomorrow, if they did nothing else, to get next level performance from it?
Investigate what their system can do. So, there's nothing wrong with going to ChatGPT and saying, can I do this in my software? Can I do this? How could I do this better in my system? Those sorts of conversations, or even just going online and looking at some of the features that are available in the software that you may not know about. Talk to people like us, obviously, because, we will have a good understanding of what other people in other businesses are doing that are accelerating their performance, that even ChatGPT might not know about, because it's something that we've done for another client that they said, hey, this is really good and this has worked really well for us. That exchange of ideas is so important. It's like yourself with your clients. You know that. You're always telling me, pick out your critical few items, Di.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've actually just highlighted one other thing, and that is something that I think that most clients don't do. And that is they go through their implementation process. At the end of the first year, they've got pretty competent on how to actually, do stuff in their business. And they're back to where they were. They've gotten through that what was it called? The
Trough of disillusionment.
trough of disillusionment, or as I call it, the blinding shaft of realization that it's not that simple. They've come through there and the business is humming along quite happily. And what I find that clients rarely do is then stop and do a post-implementation review where they actually sit down with their own team and also with the implementation team and review, is this delivering everything that we expected? And what else is on the table for us to take it to the next level?
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the most critical things. I mean, In our last conversation, we talked about making sure you've got a list of requirements.
Mm,
Realistically, 12 months after it, you should go back and look at that list of 12 items and go, well, what haven't we done? Because
yeah.
there might have been stuff on there that was, strap on your fairy wings job, and this is a desire that we like, but hey, if we don't get there in the first 12 months, not a problem. But, now's the time to reinvestigate those other things and go, yep, it's on our wish list. It was part of our requirements, but we're not there yet. So let's look at how we can do that now. And,
Yeah.
technology and software changes. So, what you signed up to 12 months ago is probably not the system that you've got now. There's probably new features and new things that the software company's actually added to.
Absolutely. And I guess with the capacity that we've now all got at our fingertips with AI or GPT or any of the large language models, what we could do today will have changed dramatically from what we could even have done perhaps even a month ago. So I think it's
Absolutely.
definitely worth an investigation.
And part of that could be as simple as just going online and reading the new release notes for the software version you're on.
Yeah. Or better still, asking GPT to read the release notes for you so you don't have to get a few hours sleep and ask how it might be able to help optimize your business to get a better result for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All of the above. There's so many things that people don't consider, like, okay,
And they
and
can't.
And I think in a lot of cases, that first 6 months of implementing a new ERP is really stressful.
Hmm.
Everybody in the team is paddling as hard as they can like a little duck, gliding along the water, but their little feet are going crazy underneath.
Yeah.
And so you have to stop and go, "Okay, what can we do better?"
Yeah. Absolutely. Fantastic, Diane. As always, it's been a delight to chat with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, John. Really appreciate your time and spending some time with me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Critical Few Actions podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and grab the downloadables from the show notes. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you share it with your peers and your team. Stay focused and take action. The Critical Few Actions podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only and is not individualised business advice, nor can it be relied upon as such. You must take responsibility for your own advice, decisions, and actions.